We are once again filming in front of my ridiculous unhaul pile, and this video is not my unhaul video. Not gonna lie, it's a kind of cool background that I want to take advantage of while I have it, which won't be for too much longer. Hi guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be my October wrap-up. I didn't read an enormous amount in October, but what I did read I enjoyed for the most part, and everything I read just put me more and more into the reading mood, which I am just so happy about and so grateful for, because I have not read much this year. Like, I haven't been reading, I haven't wanted to pick up, and just to have that desire to read books again and to be excited about the books that you have on your shelves to read is such a good feeling. So I'm so glad that I've found my way back there and that these books have helped me find my way back there. So I will have timestamps in the description box and also along the bar, you know, how you can scroll across the video screen and it can tell you what section is labels, what the sections are labeled. If the creators labeled it, I'll do that so then you can see what books I'm talking about in which proportion of this video, and you can kind of pick between what you're interested in and skip over what you're not interested in. And quite a few of these books I think were also mentioned in vlogs, so I'm going to start off by talking about the books that did not feature in vlogs, or I only started talking about in vlogs and then the vlog finished so you didn't get my final thoughts, and then I'll leave the books that I spoke about in vlogs in the last part of this video. Okay, I want to start off by talking about a reread I did in October, which was absolutely on the whim. I did not plan to do this reread anytime soon at all, really, and that is Vampire Academy by Richelle Mead. I don't think I've read this since I was like 16 years old, so to read this now, it was so fun and nostalgic and very interesting. Very interesting. 16-year-old Nicole read books based on the love interest. Like, that was how I would read books. That's how I was interested in books. That was how I rated books. Like, if I didn't like the love interest, the book would get a low rating from me. Vampire Academy, where do we start? I feel like most people have read this, but if you haven't, we essentially follow high school students who attend this vampire school. They're all vampires, and the vampire lore in this world is so fascinating, so amazing. One of the best story elements, I have to say. So we have Rose, who is our main character, and she's a Dampier, I think you say. I'm probably going to butcher all the vampire terminology, so apologies. She is essentially like half vampire, half human. So she does have, like, I think extra strength, but other than that, she doesn't have any magical abilities. And in this world, the Dampiers, they're trained as bodyguards for the most part. Not everyone. It's not that common among the women. A lot of the women aren't bodyguards because they're women. They're bodyguards for the Moroi vampires, and they're the vampires in this world who are mortal, who have elemental magic, are like full-blooded vampires, whereas the Dampiers, like Rose, are considered like half-blooded vampires. And they're also the rulers of the vampire world. Like, all the vampire rulers in this world are all Moroi, and all the Dampiers are trying to train up to protect the Moroi, and what they're protecting them from is the Shigori, we'll go with that. The Shigori are the evil vampires essentially in this world. They are immortal, they are the undead, they have super strength and abilities. But what's really interesting is, so the Moroi, they have elemental magic. If they become Shigori, they actually have to give up their elemental magic. So they might live forever, but they don't have that elemental magic that they were born with. So I love the magic in this world. I love the magic system. But my favorite part that I can remember growing up, other than the love interest. It was the friendships and just all the characters as well. We follow Rose, who I mentioned, and we also follow Lisa, who is her best friend from childhood and is also the person, or the vampire in this world, I guess you should say, that Rose is learning to fight to protect. That's her like goal in life. She is like Lisa's best friend and she wants to be her like protector and guardian. I love their friendship. I love it so much. I think it'd be so interesting if Richelle Mead wrote it now, sorry, because there are very strong sapphic vibes, like very, very strong sapphic vibes. The other thing I distinctly remember loving was just Rose herself. I love her as a character. She's quite snarky. I love that she's not a prissy female protagonist. I can remember as a teenager reading so many prissy protagonists, and they were all these girls who, you know, didn't know that they were pretty and they needed a man or a love interest to tell them that they were pretty. Whereas in this, Rose is so confident. She doesn't need that, and I love that. Most of the things I remember are more like character relationship related, and what I'd forgotten was more the individual character storylines and developments. I completely forgot about the mental health rep in here. In fact, I don't really think I understood it as a teenager myself. I don't really think I got it that much. There's self-harm, so trigger warning for that. I completely forgot as well, and this is like one of the most prominent parts of this story, is at the beginning Rose and Lisa are kind of like on a run, hiding away. They're away from the school, so you don't know what's happened, but it's obvious that they're in hiding. They're trying to not get caught by the other vampires in the world, and then they do, like within the first chapter, and then they're dragged back to the school. And so there's this mystery the whole time around why they're gone. I could remember why they were gone, like it came back to me as I was reading it, because it's a storyline or plot that does continue to play out throughout the rest of the series, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, just the whole fact that they had run away, that this book actually didn't start at the school, that it starts off in the human world, I had completely forgotten about. So yeah, it was fun. I really want to actually continue. I might try and pick up book 2 this month if I get the desire to, which I feel like I will. I have a feeling book 2 or book 3 was one of my favorites. I can't remember which, and there's something I can remember happening at the end of one of those books, but I can't remember which book it happens at the end of. So I really want to read it because I remember loving that particular plot point. And I just want to experience that again and experience it as an adult. So didn't give this book a rating. My original rating for it was 5 stars. I would not give it 5 stars this time around, because even though I had so much fun, so much nostalgia for this book, there's definitely elements that don't hold up to today's thinking and today's standards, and just also my standards as well. But overall, I think this is such a solid YA from its time, and I really enjoyed just how straightforward the writing was. That's something I really need to mention, is the writing is super straightforward. And I have sometimes an issue with some modern YA where they're trying to be too flowery, too pretty, too busy painting a picture and not painting a story. Does that make sense? I hope so. I've talked about this for 12 minutes. Whoops. The next book I want to chat about is One Dark Window. This is a new fantasy release, and I heard my friend Katie talk about it, and she spoke about it quite highly, and she also compared it to For the Wolf by Hannah Winton, which is a book I read at the end of last year, and I really enjoyed it. I can see exactly why Katie compared it. It's got that dark fairy tale vibe. This book is set in a world where children can get a sickness from a young age, and if they survive that sickness, they get magical abilities of a sort. They seem to not know what those magical abilities are until those abilities manifested, but they're connected to the overarching magic of this world, which is to do with tarot cards. There's all these different tarot cards, and there's like this shepherd king that like made them, and there's this whole mythology around them, and it's also connected to the forest. I'm not gonna lie, the biggest downfall about this book for me was the way all the magical elements connect really confused me, and it made it difficult for me to get into the story. The beginning of the book really shoved all this information about the magic of this world and how it works down your throat. I think by the end of the story I got a grasp, or a decent grasp at least, on how the magic works, but my understanding of how it kind of came into the world and how it connects is still quite vague, because I just don't think the story gave you an explanation, or if it did, it over-explained itself to the point I didn't get it, or maybe I'm just stupid. But I did want to point that out because I did find it quite confusing, because there's these tarot cards in place, and like I know they're connected to the gods and like the religion of this world, and then there's like the sickness, and then there's like this forest, and I'm like, hold on, this is a lot. But what you need to know is this girl gets the sickness as a child and she survives the sickness. It's this huge taboo thing as well, because the children who get the sickness are taken away by the king, the evil king, and her dad is a soldier. He's like a captain, I think, of this part of the army. I can't remember what part of it was. He, up until that point of his daughter getting the sickness, was very loyal to the crown. He kept her sickness a secret, and he ends up sending her to live with her aunt and uncle, and so that she's raised outside of her father's home, who her father does remarry because her mum died when she was very young. She survives the sickness after being cared for. What ends up happening is she gets a demon like in her head. That's her magical ability sort of thing. Like, so it's not necessarily magic like elemental magic that you would typically think of. It's obscure magic in this world that these children develop that has to do with the tarot cards. I love stories where there's any sort of demonic character, but I think it's really interesting as well to have one in the head, and yeah, he was just there the whole time. So essentially the plot of this book is the king is trying to gather all the tarot cards. Our main character, Elizabeth, I don't think I've mentioned her name, but her name's Elizabeth. The demon in her can see the tarot cards, so he can get a sense of them if they're in someone's possession, and he can also tell what tarot card it is. She ends up pretending it's her own ability that she can see the tarot cards and what tarot cards other people possess, instead of like telling people she has a demon. She ends up getting into a sort of alliance with this family who are related to the king and who are hunting down the tarot cards for themselves. There's also kind of like a fake dating or fake courtship relationship happening, scenario happening, which I really quite liked. I really like the family she ends up going to stay with. I will say it's like a good kind of chunk into the book where you kind of don't get to that. There's so much world building at the beginning. I love magic systems where there is a limitation and also when there's a cost to magic, and in here there are costs, and like how every individual in this world has different magical abilities, the costs are also different, and I think that just made for a really fascinating reading experience in terms of discovering, first of all, what magical ability other characters have, but also what it's costing them. I also loved the ending. It was a great ending. It definitely would have made me run to pick up book 2 if it was out, but it's not. It's probably gonna be out in another year, so I'll have to wait. So I'm just such a sucker for dark fairy tale-esque fantasy stories, and that's what this is. I think it's a perfect book to read around autumn or winter. I definitely want to read more books like this at the moment. Like, this is the kind of story I'm in the mood for. I also listened to the audiobook of Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead. I had just finished listening to her other audiobook, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and as soon as I finished that, which I loved and I will talk about after this book, I wanted to see what else was available by her from my library, and this was the only other book, so I just grabbed it straight away. Now, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife is like a thriller mystery, and silly me went into this book thinking it was going to be another thriller mystery, because authors only write one genre, right? They don't, I know that, but I was just expecting another thriller mystery from her. I didn't look up the premise of this. I didn't really even take in the cover. Like, look at the cover. How did I think that was a thriller mystery? It's not. It's a romance. I was so wrong, but I really enjoyed this. I think I just read this at such a good time. It's a very dramatic story. I was reading this the week leading up to my exam, so I wasn't doing anything else but studying, and then when I was like, you know, walking or doing house chores, this was the book I was listening to. So it was a really fantastic book to listen to during that time because it was such a escapist book from my studying and stress and life. This story follows our very messy main character, Lee Stone, who in college had this boyfriend who she was basically in love with, that she did not ever admit to herself she was in love with him, and she suspected he was cheating on her or going to cheat on her. Instead of being an adult and confronting him about it, she ends up going and cheating on him before he gets a chance, and then that ends their relationship terribly. It's like now 5 to 6 years later, and she works for this environmental company, and they're trying to get all these legislations through with the government, or they're trying to get like a bill passed. So yeah, basically she is working for this company, this environmental company. They want to get this bill passed, and to go through this bill, they're working with some sort of government office, and then the second in charge there is her ex Ben, who she cheated on and ended that relationship very awfully with. So they are reunited for this first time in 5 to 6 years. It is a mess because this book is like a second chance romance. It is also like enemies to lovers, sort of, or they're more rivals. They are also competing against each other in like a workplace scenario. The rival scenario between these two main characters really reminded me of The Hating Game. I actually didn't like The Hating Game though. I much preferred this. I think some people will find Lee a very exhausting character to read from, POV to read from, because she is very messy, she is very flawed, and yeah, I think that can also be very exhausting, and some people might not tolerate all her mistakes because she does make quite a few. But I really these days am loving my flawed, messy characters, and that's exactly why I picked this book up, because the protagonist in Ashley Winstead's other book, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, is also very flawed, and I just find it very interesting and kind of refreshing, to be honest. I think this book also had a fantastic balance of being very dramatic and silly in a sort of rom-com way, but then also having very serious moments. There was a lot of conversations in here about like dysfunctional families and like growing up in dysfunctional families, and realizing that as an adult. Lee, the main character, also has like a lot of trauma to do with her dad. She basically like stopped talking to her dad when she was younger, and then he died, and she never really got to make an amends with him, and it's something that she tries to ignore, but it does haunt her. So I really loved how there was a lot going on, and then there was a lot going on and their work environment as well. I gave it 3.5 stars in the end, and I definitely want to read whatever Ashley Winstead writes because I love her writing. She really captivates me, and I think that was the main thing. Like, this story isn't probably anything really unique or groundbreaking, nothing really new. Like I said, it reminded me of The Hating Game. It also kind of reminded me of some of Sophie Kinsella books. Like, the tone really reminded me of Sophie Kinsella, and the how dramatic some of the scenes were. So yeah, not super new, but a super captivating and enjoyable read. I should talk about now Ashley Winstead's other book that I read at the beginning of this month, which was the first book I finished in October, and this is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I did read this book in a vlog, so I'll have that linked. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife follows Jessica, who is almost 30 years old, and she has a 10-year high school reunion. She hasn't seen like any of her friends since high school, really. One of the friends in their friendship group was killed during their time in high school, and another friend in the group was accused of the murder, ended up not getting convicted because there wasn't enough evidence, so the friend's murder was never resolved. And when she goes back to the reunion, it's a unsolving of the mystery, essentially. All the friends are together for the first time in 10 years, and the brother of the friend who was killed is also there, and he is trying to put the pieces together and question them and also reveal what he knows. I really like this book. I loved how it switched timelines. We have present day where we're following Jessica and all the friends at the reunion being reunited and the reveals, and then we also have the past storyline when they were in high school. And I think another great thing was everyone had so many secrets. Like, it just felt like there was so many reveals that were spread out, and I think those are my favorite kinds of mysteries, because it just wants you to get going. Like, you don't want to put the book down because there's all this stuff being revealed and you want to keep finding out what's next, or like the aftermath of what's revealed, like what that's doing to the characters. And I think that was so entertaining. I won't say too much more about this book because I did speak about it in depth in one of my vlogs, but it is a very well plotted book. I think it's very well paced, very fascinating, all flawed characters with secrets that have not been revealed for a long time. And yeah, it was just good. It was very addictive. Like, if you want an addictive read, especially like this time of year, perfect. Okay, in my last vlog, I made some really good progress on Fool's Assassin by Robin Hobb. This book, it took me 2 months to read. It's been in a few videos. Like, I feel like I've been holding it up, saying I'm gonna finish it, and yeah, I finally did in October. I'm so glad I did. I can't say much about this. This is the third last book in a very long series. I am so attached to this story and this world and Robin Hobb's writing in general. We've followed characters in this book for over 40 years. That's a lot of time to get to know characters. I will say, I think the book definitely had a lot not happening at the beginning, which is, I think, typical of Robin Hobb, but this is very long. Like, her books keep getting longer with each book that she's released. So even though earlier books in the series there wasn't much happening early on in the book, that I felt it more here. Like, it felt more dragged out. And then there's just so much that happens at the end that's like wild. You're like, wow, that's amazing. But I think there was a good chunk of this book that was really quite slow. I'll just talk about what I love about what Robin Hobb does and what keeps me going with her stories and wanting to return to every world that she ever creates is mostly her way of writing bonds between people. She writes these relationships that have so much, like there's so much in these relationships that you feel the bond yourself. Especially like some of the connections in this book spans from these adults that are now 40 that have had friends from their childhood, but then we're also seeing these adults have their own families and they're now relationships with those members, and it's so beautiful and so touching. And I love the way she writes relationships. I love how she writes what people mean to one another, and she does it in such a beautiful way because she just has such a beautiful writing style. I think overall there's just so much emotion in her stories. Not just between characters, like yes, a lot between characters, but also in here, the way she writes about grief and the way she writes about like nostalgia. Like, there's a lot of nostalgia in here about characters' childhoods. I just have such an emotional connection to this series, and I'm a very emotional person. I love stories that move me emotionally, and I think that's what Robin Hobb just excels at, and why I just love her and adore her stories so much. I will note that I still do have a little bit of an issue with how Robin Hobb writes women. Like, I know in this world it's misogynistic, but I do roll my eyes because we have a lot of it, and I've seen a lot of it over a book, so I just kind of roll my eyes and just move on. But yeah, just want to mention it. I think the only other thing I would mention is be cautious of this book because there is a bit of animal abuse that happens, which was difficult to read and unpleasant to read. So if you cannot stomach that, I would avoid reading not just this book but the whole series. I also finished my second Peter Swanson book, which is Every Vow You Break. This is basically about a newlywed couple who go on their honeymoon, and the bride has a stalker, and the stalker follows the bride and the husband to the honeymoon, but they're at this really weird resort where it's not overly populated and it's on this like isolated island. Yeah, it's a weird time. I did not like this. I liked the start. See, the thing is, I really like Peter Swanson's storytelling. I think he's a great storyteller. He has just interesting concepts that draw you in from the beginning, because one of the first scenes, or might have been the first scene, was the wife going home from work or something. She was going home somehow and she was being followed, or she was suspecting she was being followed, and you know that on her bachelorette weekend that she had an affair, and she thinks that she's been stalked by this guy she had an affair with. It's so creepy because when she met that guy, they gave each other false names. So he gave her the name Madeline when her real name is Abigail, and then she gave him a name. So it's just extra creepy that her stalker was able to track her down when they didn't know, or he shouldn't know, her real identity, and then he just followed her to a honeymoon. I knew this entire story from very early on, from I want to say 15-20%. I knew exactly where this book was going to go. However, I didn't think I knew. I thought there was going to be some other huge reveal that I just was not seeing. This book is written in a way where it makes you anticipate the story a lot. So I was listening to this with so much anticipation that there was going to be a huge twist, maybe like 2 huge twists that I didn't see coming. And then the twist came and I was like, is that it? I said something along the lines of this in my blog, but it felt like Peter Swanson was trying to write a female empowerment story. He missed the mark. He missed the mark so bad, because I'm like, I kind of feel insulted by this. I feel like I can't say anything else because it's so easy to reveal what this book is about. Like, you'll probably read it and figure it out anyway, but I'll leave my thoughts there. I talk a lot about it in my vlog. Like, I go into a pretty in-depth rant, so if you want to hear more thoughts of mine, watch that vlog. So those are all the novels I read or listened to this month, and the only other things that are left to talk about are the manga I read. I didn't read as much as I really wanted to at the beginning of the month. I did complete SpyxFamily Volume 7, which is in a vlog, so I don't want to talk about it here, but I think this is like my least favorite volume so far. Still liked it, but doesn't have the family all together like I like. I love seeing our spy family together, doing things together, not individual or random side characters. Like, that's just not as interesting. And I did also read quite a few more chapters, or it was probably only like 5 more chapters of Bleach, I think. I've been reading them on my iPad, so I know I've definitely finished volume 3 now, and I think I'm still somewhere in volume 4. I haven't progressed yet to the Soul Society chapters, which I'm really excited to get to. I feel like once I get there, I'm going to like really want to binge read the stories. That is it for this video. I feel like I did not a great job at chatting about books today, so apologies for that. I think work just really killed me this week, to be honest. It was a hard week, not gonna lie. But anyway, if you've made it this far, please leave me. We'll do the butterfly emoji. It's on my top today, so I'll do the butterfly emoji. Thank you for watching this far. Also comment down below what your favorite read of October is, and let me know what is one book you have to get to before the year ends. I want to know. Anyway, thanks guys. Have a lovely weekend. I hope you're enjoying whatever you're currently reading, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye.